Richmond had a big role in the slave trade. It was a center for the movement of slaves. Slaves arrived in Richmond, Virginia to be transported elsewhere. The African burial ground in Richmond is the first place where Africans that arrived were laid to rest from the mid-1770s to 1808. My classmates and I took a trip to walk the Richmond Slave Trail, which entails the history of enslaved Africans in our city. We started at the Manchester Docks, which was one of the major ports on the East Coast from 1830 to 1860 for the slave trade. Next, we walked through Shockoe Bottom to see where auction houses and slave markets used to be. We then visited the African burial ground and Lumpkin slave jail. Nicknamed the Devil's Half Acre, Lumpkin's jail is an important historical site in Richmond, Virginia, because it was a holding facility for slaves. Robert Lumpkin was a prominent slave trader who bought and sold slaves in the South, and he was the one who made Lumpkin's jail into the largest slave-holding facility in Richmond. The building was already used as a holding facility before Lumpkin purchased it, but he made it much more extreme. He had a whipping room in the jail where he tortured slaves. Slaves were crammed together into one room with no toilets or access to outside. Because of this, slaves often died of disease and starvation. The slaves that died were buried at the African burial ground. The most well-known inmate that resided in Lumpkin's jail was Anthony Burns. Burns was born a slave in Stafford County, Virginia in 1834. In 1853, he escaped slavery and went to Boston for work. The next year, he was arrested under the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 and was sent back to Virginia. In Virginia, he was held at Lumpkin's jail for 4 months until abolitionists raised enough money to buy him his freedom. Robert Lumpkin eventually married and impregnated a light-skinned slave that he purchased named Mary. They had 5 children together. Once Lumpkin died, he left all of his property to Mary in 1866. Mary then sold all of the land to a minister named Nathaniel Culver, who was looking for somewhere to make an all-black seminary. This seminary is now Virginia Union University.